Okay, let's move on with the retouching group, and I'll show you the most important tools that you have here. The first tool is the spot healing brush, which is used for cleaning spots. That's why it's called spot healing brush. It can clean small parts of the image, and it's really easy to use. Just click on the part that you want to clean and it does the job. And you have a few options here. If you're using Photoshop CS3 or CS, I think CS4 also has the content aware, but CS3 only have proximity match. So, but it works the same. There's no change. So it works the same. For example, if I want to clean this little spot here, I select the tool, paint over it, and it's gone. And if you right click, you have this menu here, which allows you to set the hardness and the size of the brush. Regarding the size, you should use the size of the imperfection you're trying to correct. For example, for this tool I'm using a small, for this spot, sorry, I'm using a small brush, but if I want to clean this one here, I should use a bigger one, something like this. And the hardness, I usually leave it to like 20-25%, and the spacing I don't change that, or the other options I leave those ones to the default. So as I said, it's really easy to use. Just click, paint over the part you want to hide or to clean, and it's gone. As easy as that. So I'll go back into the history, and let's move on to the healing brush tool. Now the healing brush tool is the same as the spot healing brush, but if you click on an area, you will get an error message like this, and it tells you that you have to press the Alt key and click on an area to sample, and then use that sample to fix another part of the image. So if I want to clean this little spot here, let me adjust the hardness first. If I want to clean this spot here, first I have to press the Alt key and sample from somewhere nearby, for example here, and click, and it samples from there, and it puts that part that I sampled on top of it. And you can see that small plus on the area that I sampled moving as I move along. So, and another important thing you have to notice is that this, for example, this part over here is a darker part. The skin here is darker than here. So if I want to sample from here, you will see that the luminosity don't match really well. But when I let go the mouse, Photoshop will adjust that for me. So it's really important that you have that luminosity match, so it blends the luminosity value according to the surrounding area. And that also happens on the spot brush, but not as good, because they are used for different things. You should only use the spot tool for things like this, small lines or dust or small scratches like this. And with the healing brush tool, you can use for bigger areas. And you can see we fixed this part over here with the healing brush tool. Now let's go back to see how it was before and after. Okay, let's go back to the original, and let's move on to the patch tool. Now with the patch tool, you can fix bigger areas of the skin. So for example, these wrinkles here, I can select them like this and drag this selection on the part of a softer part of the skin. Oops, sorry. Make sure you have this on source. So click and drag, and you'll see that selection being replaced. So this will work just fine. And also notice how Photoshop will match the color and the luminosity for me. You can do the same with this part. And make sure you the area that you're using as the destination is similar in texture and luminosity, because even though Photoshop will try to match them, it sometimes don't work too well. So try to do things right yourself. Let's go back to undo that. And that was with the source. If you set the destination, it works on the opposite way. You have first you have to select the area that is clean and drag it on top of the area you want to fix, just like this. And as you can see, I'm doing a horrible job right now, but you get what I mean. Okay, enough. It's just a matter of practicing. And you can also get a regular selection. For example, if I get the lasso tool and I make a selection like this by hand, and with the selection active, I can get the patch tool, and when I click and drag, it will work the same. Let's do the source thing. So this works out better. So we remove those wrinkles. Let's get them back. Okay. The last one here is on the list is the red eye tool, which here I cannot use, but it's really easy to use. Just click on the eye and Photoshop will do the work for you. On Photoshop CS3 you had to set some settings here on the settings bar, but it's really simple to use. I don't use this tool too much, but if you want to correct that, just select the tool and mess around with it, and I'm sure you'll be able to fix the problem, because it's really easy to use. One of the most important tools we have here, which is the brush tool. You will use this tool a lot. Also depends on the kind of designs you like and what you use Photoshop for, but you will use this a lot of times. You can access the brush tool with the B key on the keyboard, and inside here you have a few other tools which I will not mention because I only use these two ones, the brush tool and the pencil tool. And the brush tool is really easy to use. Just you can paint with it, basically. That's what it does. If you right click, you get this menu which allows you to select a few different shapes. For example, like this. Notice that even if I have the black color, it also paints with white, because you can set options for brushes, but I will explain that on a separate video because I have a special video for the brush tool. But you can set the size. Let's get a default brush. You can set the size and hardness. So if you want hard edges like this, set hardness to 100, and if you want soft edges, you go to 0%, and of course the size in pixels, however you prefer. So let's move on to the pencil tool. It's exactly the same as the brush tool, but the difference is that you have very hard edges and you cannot soften them, and it's used for really precise painting. Let me get the default brush like this. You can see the difference between this and notice that it's the same size, 36 pixels. And if I get the brush tool, I get 36 pixels. The hardness is 100%. Oops. 36. But notice how even at 100% hardness, the edges are still soft, so there's a big difference between the two of them. I use most of the time the brush tool, but sometimes I need the pencil tool to make perfect edges, perfect lines. So that's it with the brush tool. Let's go with the clone tool now. The next retouching tool is the clone tool, which allows you to duplicate things. For example, if I want to duplicate this eye, first I have to sample it. You can sample by pressing the Alt key and click here, and actually let's start here. And then on another part you can click and start painting. And right now I made some sort of an alien. Let's make another one here. So this is the clone tool. You can duplicate things. You have a few options for the clone tool. Let's see where that is. There it comes. Clone source. You can make the cloned element, the element that you're cloning, you can make it smaller or bigger. Let's see where I can change that right here. Go to 50%, and you can see that now the eye is smaller. If I want to duplicate the mouth of the woman, I made it smaller because I only had it at 50%. I make it at 25%. I make it even smaller and duplicate this eye. I can make a really small eye here, and you can see that it's so small that I'm grabbing other elements. So I made something really weird here, so let me undo this. That's the clone tool. It's really easy to use it again. And inside here we have the pattern stamp, which allows you to paint with patterns like this. You can download patterns from internet, or you can make yourself. I'll show you how to make presets and stuff like that on another video. So basically you create a pattern, and you can do a lot of things with patterns. I'll show you. And then we have the history brush tool, which allows you to go back in time. So you see these empty blocks here. For example, wow, actually, let me paint something here. Okay, and now I'll make some. Actually, I'll leave it as it is, and with the history brush I can go back in time, for example, and say, okay, I want this state here, and if you paint, this thing will go away, because it will paint with the same contents that were here on this position at this time. It's a bit difficult to explain, but it works like that. For example, if I use the smudge tool and I smudge the mouth like this, and then I do some other things like, I don't know, painting the hair, let's say, and then I decide I don't want the mouth to be like that. I can, and well, let's say I paint even more, and now I don't have the history to, I cannot go back in time to fix the mouth, but I can use the history brush and click here and paint back, and it paints with the same contents that were here on the initial file, and also here with the hair. So if you did something that you cannot undo, you can use the history brush on the original image and get it back. I don't know if you understood something, but that's how it works. I have to try it for yourself. Then we have the eraser brush, which is really easy to use. Once you paint something or you have a new image, you can simply erase it, and it works exactly as the brush tool. You have the hardness and the size, and you can erase things. Easy to use. Then we have gradients, which are also important and really fun to use. You can do some really nice things. You can create gradients yourself. You can download from the internet. You can modify them, and it works like this. Once you have the gradient tool selected, you just click and drag in the direction where you want the gradient to be, like so, and you get that gradient. Right now it doesn't look too nice, but you can do some really nice things with gradients. And actually I just published a tutorial that someone sent me about how to use the gradient tool, and I'll put the link there on the video description. So if you're watching from YouTube, you can click and go to my website, or if you're on the website, you'll find the link under the video. So then you have the bucket tool, which is used for filling things, or if you have a selection like this, you can use the bucket tool to fill that selection with a color like this. Or if you don't have any selections, let me undo this. If you don't have any selection, you click, you will fill the entire image with the color that you have selected. I don't use this tool because I'm using a shortcut key, which is Alt and Backspace. And if you press Alt and the Backspace, you will fill with the foreground color, and if you hold the Control and Backspace, you will fill with the background color. Excuse me, I don't know if I said background or foreground. So again, with the Alt key, you fill with the foreground color, and if you press Control and Backspace, you paint with the background color. So try it. And next we have the smudge tool, which allows you to do some really crazy stuff, like I just did a few moments ago. Basically, it's like painting with your finger. Imagine you have a wet canvas, and you start messing around with your fingers. You can do just that. You can set the strength here. If you put it 100%, you can extend it a long way like that and have a really weird eye. Let me do that again. I just made something like a snail. Or if you can have it really soft and just do stuff like this. I don't really use this. The only thing I use this for is to create some really weird special effects, or to create hair. You can create hair by setting the size to 1 or 2 pixels. Set the strength to 100 and the strength up here to something like 80%, and just drag like this, increase the strength even more, and make 4 pixels. And you can click and drag, and you can see how you can create some fake hair with this technique. But also you can sample all layers, so if you have 2 images, you can smudge both of them at the same time. Inside here we have the sharpen tool. For sharpening and blurring, I usually use filters and adjustment layers, which I will explain on another video. But with this tool you can sharpen things on a specific part of the image where you click, basically. So you have strength at 50%, which is way high, and if you click here you can see that the eye becomes a lot sharper. And for example, on the here on the hand, the ring, you can see how sharp it becomes. And here on the other eye, you can sharpen the hair, lips. I don't know if you're able to see it. Let me zoom in. And for example, here on this, you can see how sharp it is. And if I go back, you can see the difference. This is really extreme. I would never do this on an image, but just so that you can see. And I only had the strength to 50%. If I put it to like 100%, the contrast is way too much. So you have to be careful with that. And the blur tool, it's exactly the opposite. You soften the image like this. As I said, there are filters to do this to the entire image, and I'll show you how to do that. But if you have a specific part of the image where you want to do a quick sharpening or quick blurring, you can use that. And then we have the dodge and burn, which I talked a lot about on my tutorials. On my manipulation tutorials, I showed you how to work non-destructively with that, but I'll show you how it works right now if you don't know. Now, the dodge tool, with the dodge tool you basically make the image brighter. So let me increase the exposure to like 60% so that you can see. It makes the image really bright. So, and also increases the saturation if you notice. And with the burn tool you do the opposite. You burn the image, that's why it's called the burn tool. I'll show you how to use this on a practical example later on when I make videos about this. And make sure you always have this option checked, which is protect tones, because it works better. And here you can choose which tones you want to affect, only the shadows, or if you select shadows, the highlights will not be affected. If you have select highlights, you will affect the highlights but not the shadows. I usually leave it to mid-tones, and I'll go with that. And that's all about the retouching tools. As I said, the most important ones are the brush tool and the healing tools, and also the gradient tool. And I'll make special videos for those